you said you had 1.2 million in, what was it, a meth lab that you...
Yes, we did a direct seizure with DEA. It was $1.2 million, $1.25 million that we seized.
Who ended up with the cash?
The DEA, because it was a federal case, we were brought in on it as an assisting agency because I have one of my deputies who is a detective assigned to a DEA task force. A different DEA task force in Chicago had started this case, notified us, brought us in. We executed a search warrant at 2 o'clock in the morning. And when we do cases with a federal government like that, if it's a federal case, they take it, we fill out a form that's called the DAG 71, and the agencies that are involved split the distribution of that money. When you work with the feds, 80% goes to the home agencies and 20% goes to the federal government. So it's a good deal for us.
So you ended up with something.
We ended up with something, we'll probably end up with somewhere between 5 and 10%.
Illinois is one of 10 states that does not permit a concealed carry. What is your feeling for somebody who is properly trained to be allowed to carry a concealed weapon?
It's a very easy question. I am very pro Second Amendment. For someone that is a law-abiding citizen that meets all qualifications, I have absolutely no problem with those people being allowed to carry. And actually, Illinois is the only state out of the 50 states that has no form of either open carry or concealed carry. Wisconsin was the last other state with us, and they recently went to an open carry law, meaning you can't conceal it under your clothes, you have to have it out in the open. I grew up here in Aurora, but I lived in California for 10 years. I owned a martial arts school out there, and it was broken into twice and money stolen, and there was actually a shootout from some drug dealers that happened while I was teaching a class. I went to the local police chief. I obtained a concealed carry permit out there. I know how much it meant to me. I know what I had to go through to get it. But let's look at Chicago. Let's look at Washington, D.C. They had the most stringent handgun laws in the country. And look at how many homicides happen with a firearm. So, in essence, in Chicago, the only people that have guns are the cops and the criminals. And I don't care what kind of a law you make, they're going to get them anyway. They're going to get their guns illegally. So, I think if the average citizen wants to have a fighting chance, this has to pass. So I completely support it.
You know, yeah, the district goes, it's all of Kane County.
Okay.
So
I just needed that clarification.
Sure, yeah. Well, you know, at different times I've lived in St. Charles, Geneva, and Batavia, and right now I'm just about 3 blocks down on River Street in Batavia, right down by the river. But it's this is the area that I've lived in and represent now.
It's 14th.
14th, yeah, the 14th
district,
yeah.
the
Illinois 14th district.
That we're doing with precinct 13, 14, is that?
Yeah, here, I'll show it to you. This is the voting card that they give you once you get elected. See it. This is your card here. You know, there's this card that they give you after you got elected, and that's the voting card in the House. So you can pass it around if you want. This is because it's your card. And you take that card and you walk across Independence Avenue and up the steps into the Capitol, and there's a little microchip inside there that identifies the bearer as the representative of the Illinois 14th. And so you take that card and you walk up into the Capitol and onto the floor of the House of Representatives. And then scattered around on the floor, they have little boxes of electronics. And you take the card and you put the card into the box of electronics. Then you press the red button or the green button, and the world changes a little bit. And if you do your job well, the world improves. And that's, what I try to do every day. Yes.
Is this on? Yeah.
Oh, it's
Okay.
for me.
It's for you. Okay, my husband's in manufacturing and has been for 29 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering what your proposal is to keep manufacturing here in Illinois, what you've done in the past and what your plan is for the future, and specifically maybe about taxes. Corporate taxes and the Bush tax code.
Surely, yeah. Surely, no, we have, I am very, very concerned about manufacturing. And, our company does the whole range. It does, sheet metal, electronic assembly, hardware, software, customer support. Manufactures actually stage lighting equipment, it turns out. We make about 70% of all the theater lighting equipment in the United States. And so, and we do our manufacturing up in Middleton, Wisconsin, if you know where that is. So, you know, town out in the cornfields. But it's, but, all right, U.S. manufacturing is under stress very heavily from imports. You know, that's the single biggest threat to the whole situation. And during this financial crisis, we have passed a total of 8 very significant tax cuts for business because we saw that we were in a financial emergency. You know, our economy took a bigger hit than we took during the beginning of the Great Depression. You know, when people ask me, you know, simply, you know, a simple way of explaining what's going on with our economy today, I talk about household net worth. That's simply the value of everything that families in the United States have. You know, their house, their retirement savings, their, you know, everything they own. And household net worth dropped by $17.5 trillion in the 18 months, in an 18-month period ending in March 2009. And that's the time that we had an emergency intervention, you know, all of the programs that everyone loves to hate. And since that intervention, the household net worth has recovered by $9 trillion. But the loss of $17.5 trillion is an inconceivably large blow that our economy took. We've never seen anything like it in my lifetime. And maybe in some of yours you have. But that was, just to put it in perspective, we lost $17.5 trillion. The GDP, the total value of everything produced in this country for 1 year, is about $14 trillion. So we lost more than 1 year's output in 18 months. The average, another way to look at it, is the average U.S. family lost 25% of its net worth. The $17.5 trillion is about over a quarter of your net worth. Just to put it in comparison, at the start of the Great Depression, families in the United States lost only about 12% of their net worth, and we lost it over 4 years, from 1929 to 1933. So we took a bigger hit faster than at the start of the Great Depression. And so that's why an emergency intervention was necessary. And one of the biggest parts to it, to get back to your question, were tax cuts. We passed, as I said, a total of 8 very significant tax cuts, many of them targeting businesses, small businesses, and families. And just to quote 2 numbers as a result of that, the first thing is that because of these tax cuts, the after-tax profits of businesses today they're higher than they ever have been. They've exceeded the pre-crisis levels. And that's in large parts because of tax cuts that I voted for. And of course, you know, it takes a while for that to translate back to jobs. You know, those of you that ran businesses, and you know, when you have a big downturn and when you have to lay off employees, it is such a searing experience that that you never want to do it again. And so businesses are very conservative about rehiring people after the end of a financial catastrophe such as we went through. And so that's what's happening right now. Businesses are saying, well, I went through a near-death experience. I'm going to actually get myself in a better cash position. I'm not going to carry as much debt as I used to. And that's what's happening now, is that businesses are doing something I regard as sort of healthy, which is getting a better cash position. Consumers are doing the same thing. You know, for a long time, you weren't a good homeowner unless you were carrying you weren't a smart homeowner unless you were carrying a giant mortgage. You weren't a good businessman unless you were carrying a whole lot of debt. And that's sort of the way it was in the last 10 years, and that was sort of the culture we got into, and we're reversing that. So consumers are starting to pay down their credit cards. And, you know, that's good and it's bad. Because, it's good that people are paying down their credit cards, and it's bad because, you know, that means there's less people going to the stores. And what you need is balance, and the balance that's been missing in our economy. We had so much emphasis on debt, so much emphasis on short-term thinking, and so it's going to be painful as we readjust to that. But the first step is getting businesses and small businesses profitable again, and you know, the very large tax cuts that we passed, you know, are a big part of that.